Hi guys, Ben here and welcome to Motivation to Invest. Mark Zuckerberg is one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all time. From humble beginnings, he started Facebook in his Harvard dorm room before growing it to the world's largest social media platform as part of his mission to connect the world. Zuckerberg became the youngest billionaire at 23 years old and is now worth over $83 billion. He is a mission-driven entrepreneur who aims to deliver real value and genuinely help people. So what are his secrets to success? In this video, we're going to find out as I reveal Mark Zuckerberg's 20 keys to success, both in business and in life.
Coming in, flex, I just wanna win.
Before we get started, if you appreciate the hard work which has gone into compiling this video, go ahead and smash that like button. That really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, which empowers us to produce more content like this for you guys. And if you'd like more investing tips and exclusive stock market picks, feel free to subscribe to this channel and turn the notification bell on. With that being said, let's dive in.
There are probably a lot of people who can run Microsoft and do a reasonable job. When I was growing up, Bill Gates was my hero.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
He's like Darth Vader. He's not Luke Skywalker.
No.
He's the bad guy.
No, he is not. Bill Gates ran one of the most mission-driven companies that I can think of, right? And right now I think Microsoft, their mission is less focused than it used to be. But when I was thinking about what I wanted to be when I grew up, Microsoft I thought had a great mission. Put a computer on every desktop and in every office, right? Or maybe it was every desktop in every home. There are companies that define themselves by a way of doing things, right? There's like the HP way that I was talking about, and there are companies that define themselves by making a concrete change in the world. And Microsoft did that. And I have a huge amount of respect for him for doing that. And he pushed them, and it was an incredibly inspiring company during the time that he was doing that. I think that they still are doing a lot of things, but I think that they've lost some of the focus. And I don't know. I think he's like one of the greatest visionaries that our industry has ever had.
Right? Like, were you influenced by Peter Thiel or Sean?
Well, yes,
Parker,
I was influenced by all
met?
these people once I met them. I hadn't really heard of Peter Thiel before.
I'm
Sean
talking about
introduced me.
yeah, right.
But he was massively influential on my thinking, right? Like a lot of the early lessons that I took on how to think about strategy came from Peter and Sean.
Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place.
First of all, focus on it, right? I think you basically get what you spend your time doing, right? I want the company to build 3 products this year. We're going to work on a few others because people are interested in them, but those are the 3 things that I'm spending my product time on, right? You get what you put into it. If you spend a third of your time trying to make the people around you better through getting better people, mentoring, getting them to be better, getting the best people in your organization into more impactful roles, then I think over time that just accrues and you get a better organization.
I built the first version of Facebook because it's something that my friends and I wanted to use at Harvard, a directory and a way to connect with the other people around us. And I didn't think at all that it was going to be a company. I remember very specifically the night that we launched the first version. I went out to get pizza with a couple of my friends who now work here, and and I remember really clearly we were talking about how one day we thought that someone was going to build a community like this for the world, and that would be some company. But it clearly wasn't going to be us. It wasn't even.
It didn't even occur.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even an option that we considered that it might be us. We just weren't focused on building a company back then. We were just building something that we thought would be useful at our school. with Facebook, there was just such, people loved it, right? And had such an intensity of using it. I think within a couple of weeks, 2/3 of students at Harvard were using it. And all these other students at MIT and other local universities were writing in, asking us if we could open up Facebook at their school. So we kind of just followed that, right? And, again, I didn't set out, and, my roommates didn't set out to build a service that we were going to turn into a company, but we just kind of followed what people wanted, and that led us to expand it to all these other schools and eventually beyond schools, and to, at some point, once we'd hired a bunch of people, we decided to turn it into a company and go for this mission of connecting the world. But that's not where we started. I always think that you should start with the problem that you're trying to solve in the world, and not start with deciding that you want to build a company. Right? I mean, the best companies that get built are things that are trying to drive some kind of social change, even if it's just local in one place. More than starting out because you want to make a bunch of money or have a lot of people working for you or build some company in some way. So, I always think that this is kind of a perverse thing about Silicon Valley in a way, which is that, people decide often that they want to start a company before they even decide what they want to do. And that just feels really backwards to me. And, for anyone who's had the experience of actually building a company, that you go through some really hard things along the way. And I think part of what gets you through that is believing in what you're doing and knowing that what you're doing is really delivering a lot of value for people. And that's, I think, how the best companies end up getting made.
When you're starting something, it's just kind of hard. You need to be pretty headstrong about it, right? And there are going to be all these challenges that come up. And I think the main thing that you need to do is just not give up, right? And kind of know what you want to do. And the best entrepreneurs who I've met don't really start companies because their goal is to build a company. They do it because they want to make a change in the world and help people. And I think if you kind of stay true to that, and if you just focus on kind of powering through no matter what the challenges are that will inevitably come up in your path, then you'll find that there are lots of tools that are available and a lot of people who will help you build. Things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes, because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up. Right, and I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable. But you just kind of bounce back and you learn, and nothing is impossible. You just have to kind of keep running through the walls.
In a world that's changing so quickly, the biggest risk you can take is not taking any risk. And I really think that that's true, right? I mean, a lot of people, I think that whenever it comes to, whenever you get yourself into a position where you have to make some big shift in direction or do something, there are always people are going to point to the downside risks of that decision. And locally, they're maybe right? I mean, for any given decision that you're going to make, there's upside and downside. But in aggregate, if you are stagnant and you don't make those changes, then I think you're guaranteed to fail, right? And not catch up. So to some degree, I think it's really right that over time, the biggest risk that you can take is to not take any risks.
One definition that I have for a good team is a group of people that makes better decisions as a whole than would individually make as a sum of the parts. And I think most smart people like learning. Right, and I mean, that's like one of the thrills of starting a company, right, is the learning curve can be so steep. And if you can set up a team dynamic where you're constantly learning from the people around you, then I mean, what's better, right? It's like, these are the people I wake up every morning and I want to go learn from and work from.
Is that one of your heuristics for hiring people too, to like hire people that you learn from?
Yeah. And when building a team, you want to think about the dynamics, so that way you can maintain this property that the team makes better decisions as a group than any individual would. If we were primarily focused on profits, the most reasonable thing for us to do would be to really just focus on the first billion people who are using our products. I mean, the world isn't set up equally, and the first billion people who are using Facebook have way more money than the rest of the world combined. So from a business perspective,
it actually doesn't make a huge amount of sense for us to put the emphasis in this that we are right now. The reason why we're doing it is two things. One is mission, right? I mean, we're here to help connect the world, and we take that really seriously. And to some degree, you can't really do that if 2/3 of the world doesn't even have access to the internet. So, we just turned 10 as a company. And we decided that in our next 10 years, we want to take on some really big challenges in the world, like helping everyone get online. And that's just an important thing for us, and I think for a lot of other internet companies, and fulfilling this mission overall. Now, over the long term, I do think it could be good for our company as well, if you look at it in a 10, 20, 30-year time horizon, because a lot of these countries and economies will develop, and over time, they will be important.
It's really good to be idealistic, but be prepared to be misunderstood. Anyone working on a big vision is going to get called crazy, even if you end up right. Anyone taking on a complex problem is going to get blamed for not fully understanding it, even though it's impossible to know everything up front. Anyone taking initiative will always get criticized for moving too fast, because there's always someone who wants to slow you down. We've had this tradition for, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years at the company, where every week we have a Q&A where our employees can come and ask me any question that they want about what's going on, and what the direction of the company is, or questions or things that they read about in the press, or that their friends who use the product, what they're asking them. And it's been this really important tradition for us, both because we really believe in openness and communication, and that's kind of what Facebook is all about. But it's also really important for me and for running the company to be able to get feedback, right? And to be able to learn what's on people's minds, what our employees and folks who are part of our team are thinking about, and just kind of a lot of the time there are good questions that people ask that change the way that we think about what we're building and what we're here to do in the world, and that often make us go think and reevaluate how we should be approaching different problems.
Getting transparency inside a company is really critical. But if the people running the company don't have a sense of what all of the people around the company are worried about, then you're not going to be able to run the company as best as possible. And so that's why I do things like every week I run an open Q&A. And it's that way anyone can come and ask me any question. But it's not only that. We try to make it so that we encourage people to ask the hardest possible questions. We create a poll in advance, and people can submit questions, and people can vote on them, and they can do that anonymously. So that way, I can make sure every week that I know what the top issues are that people are worried about inside the company, and so that I can address that. And we certainly have a pretty flat management culture. We're not generally very hierarchical. I talk to a lot of product managers and engineers, and just go through many layers of management, because I want to hear what's going on. And that's how we try to operate the company, and I think that that's very important. We've made a huge number of mistakes along the way. Right now, I always say, I just think we've made probably every possible mistake you could make.
Is there a decision that you've made that the people around you told you was a mistake, and you defied them, and you were right?
The most famous one, I think, probably has to do with selling the company, right? I mean, in 2006,
right,
we had this opportunity to sell the company to Yahoo for $1 billion, and we turned that down. I think a lot of people at the time thought that we should sell the company.
Absolutely.
But, I felt really strongly, and I think now people generally think that was a good decision. A lot of people who I think build startups or companies think that selling the company or going public is this endpoint, right? It's like you win when you go public. And that's just not how I see it.
So there's this inherent conflict in the system, though, which is, are we trying to optimize newsfeed to give each person, all of you guys, the best experience when you're reading? Or are we trying to help businesses just reach as many people as possible? And in every decision that we make, we optimize for the first, for making it so that for the people who we serve, who use Facebook and who are reading newsfeed, get the very best experience that they can. And that means that if a business is sharing content that's going to be useful for them, then we'll show that. But that means that if the business is sharing content that isn't going to be useful for them, we may not show that, because it's probably more important that they learn about their friend who had a baby and their baby is healthy. So that's an important guiding principle for how we think about this stuff. And as the products continue to develop, there's just going to be more people sharing more things.
And we're going to continue to try to do our best at showing the best things that we can, understanding that there's no way that a person will ever take the time to go through every one of the 1,500 things that are shared with them every single day. But that's kind of how I think about organic reach. And there are a lot of pages that are doing quite successfully, and their organic reach is growing quite a bit because they're delivering content to people that they really want. So if you're a business owner and you're thinking about how to use your free page on Facebook, I would just focus on trying to publish really good content that's going to be compelling to your customers and the people who are following you. Today, I want to talk about purpose. But I'm not here to give you the standard commencement about finding your purpose. We're millennials. We try to do that instinctively. Instead, I'm here to tell you that finding your purpose isn't enough. The challenge for our generation is to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. One of my favorite stories is when JFK went to go visit the NASA Space Center, and he saw a janitor holding a broom, and he asked him what he was doing, and the janitor replied, "Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon." Purpose is that feeling that you are a part of something bigger than yourself, that you are needed, and that you have something better ahead to work for. Purpose is what creates true happiness. I remember that night I launched Facebook from that little dorm in Kirkland House. I went to Noakes with my friend KX, and I remember telling him clearly that I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us. We were just college kids. We didn't know anything about that. There were all these great big technology companies with all these resources, and I just assumed one of them would do it. But this idea was so clear to us that all people want to connect. So we just kept working on it, day after day after day. And I know that a lot of you are going to have your own stories just like this. A change in the world that seems so clear that you are sure someone else is going to do it. But they're not. You will. But it's not enough to have that purpose yourself. You also have to create a sense of purpose for others. Maybe you're asking yourself, can I really do this? Well, remember when I told you about that class I taught at the Boys and Girls Club? One day after class, I was talking to my students about going to college, and one of my top students raised his hand and said that he wasn't sure he could go to college because he's undocumented. He wasn't sure if they'd take him. Last year, I took him out to breakfast for his birthday, and I wanted to get him a gift, so I asked him what he wanted, and he just started talking about struggles that he saw other students in his class facing, and finally said, I'd really just like a book on social justice. I was blown away. Here is a young guy who has every reason to be cynical. He wasn't sure if the country he calls home, the only one he's known, was going to deny him his dream of going to college. But he wasn't feeling sorry for himself. He wasn't even thinking of himself. He has a greater sense of purpose, and he's going to bring people along with him. It says something about our situation today that I can't even say his name because I don't want to put him at risk. But if a high school senior who doesn't know what the future holds for him can do his part to move the world forward, then we owe it to the world to do our part too. But the students around me were really important as well, right? And both in high school and in college, the people who started Facebook with me, and a lot of the people who are still with me running the company today, are people who I met when I was at Harvard. And some of them were my TFs at Harvard, right? And when the professors were off writing papers, these were the people who actually taught me, and then we hung out, and we had social bonds and academic bonds. And
I wouldn't understate the importance of that. And I mean, it's very tied into my whole philosophy and the product that I spend my life building, Facebook, because we just believe that social bonds are critical. And one way that I think about the value that Facebook is filling in the world is that you go through school, and at least when I did, people just focused on academics, like achievement, different areas. And one of the things that no one really ever taught me was like having friends is really valuable. Now, not that I didn't have friends, but like, although the movie,
yes,
make it seem that I did. But
that first girlfriend.
But for sure, I don't think anyone is like. It's not like, okay, third grade, we're gonna teach you that like hanging out with people is a very important development, right? And I don't know, I actually think that is. And I think that that's part of the reason why sometimes people view Facebook as a waste of time, but I actually think it's this extremely socially valuable utility. And I know that I wouldn't be where I am today without that aspect of my life being as developed as the academic part. I kind of think about what we're doing today very similarly to how I thought about where we were at the beginning. I get people all the time who come to me and say, all right, well, you're investing billions of dollars in trying to put internet connectivity in places where we don't get paid for it. It's not something that we'll make any money from for a very long period of time if it works out. But it's this deep belief that you're trying to make a change, you're trying to connect people in the world, and I really do believe that if you do something good and if you help people out, then eventually some portion of that good will come back to you. And you may not know up front what it's going to be, but that's just been the guiding principle for me in the work that we've done.
I spent a bunch of time analyzing and reflecting on why it was that we were even able to do it, because all reasons suggest that we shouldn't have been able to do it, right? Because all these other companies had way more engineering power and servers and time and money and all this stuff. And I actually think that this is a pretty instructive thing for anything that you want to go do, because this is the same property is going to be true for anything that you guys start, is that someone else is going to have more resources and be able to do it. The reason why I think we actually ended up being the ones doing it is because we just cared way more about it than everyone else, right? So there were always projects at some of these other companies that were these hobbies, but we always thought that it was this really important thing and really just felt in our gut and our heart that we wanted to do it. And early on, there were always these skeptics saying that, oh, this can't be a business. We didn't actually care that much about it being a business early on, but a lot of the reason why bigger companies didn't invest in it was because it wasn't clear that there was a model that would work for it.
It seemed like a bad idea.
Yeah, and I actually think that that's true for a lot of the best ideas, where it is that it's not that someone else can't do it, they actually can, and the odds are stacked against you, but I think often that belief in the fact that you just care so much about what you're doing is the only thing that kind of drives you to do it.
You kind of need to remind yourself that you need to focus and try not to let stuff bother you as much as possible, but it is going to bother you because you're human, and I was human. I am human, still. But I was just referring to myself in the past. Not that I was not human.
One of the crazy things when you do these live Q&As is some of them are very silly. So we got one. Mark, are the allegations true that you are secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no on that. I am not a lizard. But keep the high quality comments coming in, please. This is surely on track to be a great live Q&A if we continue getting stuff at that level of quality.
So which of Mark Zuckerberg's keys to success resonated the most with you? Comment your favorite below. Also, I would love to know your thoughts on this recent fact that Kylie Jenner has dethroned Mark Zuckerberg as the youngest ever billionaire. Do you think this is complete madness, or do you think this shows the power of social media and how it can empower people? Comment your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead, smash that like button, and definitely subscribe. See you next time.
Coming in, flex. I just wanna win, LABB, who we running with, coming in, flex. I just wanna win,